Namaskar and welcome to this exciting new episode of Sathology Debunking Mythology. And we have covered many topics for a reference sake. Sathology is a word I invented, and Sat means truth. It's a true antonym of myth in Sanskrit, which means imaginary or fake or which doesn't exist. So when you combine Latin word logos with Sat, it becomes Sathology, science of truth, study of truth. And mythology remains as science of myth or science of imagination, science of fake. The word mythology was first used in 1844 against the popular Indian culture by the faith-based colonizers from Britain. And that's how the word became very popular. And later on, it is being used for all the South American religions. They're called mythology. But anyway, we call it Sathology because we have archaeological, astronomical, and historical proofs of the actual happenings of ancient Vedic incidents, especially mentioned in Ramayana and Mahabharata. Today, we have a great personality with us. He champions himself as a communication consultant, but he was a state civil servant of India as an IPS, Indian Police Services, and he has done a yeoman's work in highlighting the ancient history and traditions of India. We are very fortunate to have him today, and I have read his works in the past, and today he has come out with a new book, and which is also gelling with my upcoming new book, the sixth book, which I'm writing on Sathology. And you can search on Sathology on Amazon, you can see all the titles. But this book is closely related to for a very pet topic and of mine. And without delay, let us welcome Sri Uday Sahai.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
You're most welcome. And this book is of yours is a very attractive title, Gaya, which is a major tourist destination for most of the, I would say, countries like Japan, Cambodia, and people who are trying to search their history and their roots in India. So can you tell us a little bit about this book first before we start on with the show?
First of all, my thanks to the team and to you personally and to all the audience, the guest amongst the audience, which you have introduced to us. Well, this book, let me go by the facts first. This is called Gaya, the Land of Enlightenment and Salvation. This is the front cover of the book. You can see a ritual being performed, which is a post-death ritual, so to say. So Gaya is a small town in a state called Bihar in India, which technically is almost eastern India, and one of the ancient cities of India. And it has a twin city called Gaya and Bodh Gaya. Gaya represents Hinduism largely, whereas Bodh Gaya represents Buddhism. And this twin city gives you a very interesting insight into two, denominational layers in India. And as we explain, you will understand how it interests tourists coming from not only different parts of India, but also from across the world, especially the Buddhist countries. The focus of the book is primarily on culture, its history, and it's a kind of a pictorial documentation of the city, and also both Gaya and Bodh Gaya. Now, Gaya technically represents, it is called a city of salvation, and Bodh Gaya is called the city of enlightenment. As you get into the city, there is a huge board which says you are welcome to the land of enlightenment and salvation. Enlightenment technically is while you are living your life, whereas salvation is post your life or life of your ancestors, parents, etc. And therefore, the book takes you to different layers of civilization when where Gaya precedes both Gaya. There's a difference of almost 8 generations between the two. And it would be an interesting exercise to explore why Lord Buddha, of all places in India, decided to come to this part of the country, and why, of all places, did he choose Bodh Gaya as a seat of his enlightenment. That's a different debate altogether, but we first start with Gaya. Gaya, uh, as I explained to you, is a city which primarily represents the city of rituals post death. And there are 3 kinds of rituals which are performed here by devout Hindus who come from different parts of the country, at times also from abroad. When their parents die, it is believed that their soul is still around. And unless you perform certain rituals, they would not get out of the cycle of life. And therefore, in this city, you have number one, a hill called Ramshila Pahad. Sorry. And there's another hill called Pret Shila Pahad. And the third one is the most interesting, where you can even have ritual of death while you are living. About the first two, everybody knows. If you have a natural death, you go to Ramshila Pahad. If you have a natural death, you go to Preshila Pahad. But maybe if you don't have anyone back home and you're not sure after your death what will happen to your soul, then you can kind of a pre-book your exit out of the cycle of life by going to the third place and performing rituals there. This primarily happens around a temple called Vishnupat Temple, which is a Vishnu temple. And there are 2 grand narratives which almost binds Gaya. The first narrative is the narrative of Lord Rama and Sita, where Lord Rama, one of the major Hindu gods, as you know, comes here to perform the death ritual for his father, Janak. And it's a very interesting story that after reaching here, Ram and Lakshmana, both of them go to get some few things required for the puja, required for the rituals. And Sita is waiting behind. While she's waiting behind, she realizes that the dead person all of a sudden originates out of the sand. There is a riverbed which is almost dry throughout the year. Sorry, this is. Can I just take 1 sec? About the story of Lord Rama along with Sita and Lakshman going to Gaya to perform the death ritual for Rama's father. And while Ram and Lakshman go to get the different articles required for the ritual, Sita is trying to play around with the sand. And she's creating those rice balls, kind of a rounded sand balls, that a hand emerges out of the land. This is the story. And says that I'm hungry. Please give me whatever you have right away. Sita says that they have gone to fetch the stuff required for the rituals, so we have to wait. The dead man insists that whatever you have, I am hungry, I can't wait, give it to me. So few sand balls she has in the hand, she handed over to the dead man, and the dead man's hand vanishes, goes back to the sand. In the meantime, Lord Rama and his brother Lakshmana return with all that they had gone to fetch. And they realize that already their puja is not working, their ritual is not working. So they ask Sita, what's the problem? Why it is not working? The Sita explains the entire background that already it is over because the dead man has emerged and he has been given the sand ball and the ritual is done. Rama gets a little perplexed and in disbelief, he looks at Sita and he says, but how do I believe this? What is the proof that he came and this happened? While the story, while the incident was happening, there were, 3 to 4 witnesses who were watching what's going on. One was a cow, one was a Brahmin, one was a banyan tree, and Sita cites them as evidence. The cow and the Brahmin, they, in order to please Rama, they lie. But the banyan tree speaks the truth. And therefore, Rama gets convinced, but Sita gets very, very annoyed that how come these two characters have told a different story altogether. So she curses them that the Brahmins would be a Brahmin who was a witness, would always be a dissatisfied soul and a greedy soul. And the cow, which was there, will be, roaming around the whole day for food. So with this kind of a narrative regarding a death ritual, you have a Sita Kund, which is across the river, and a beautiful spot, which is now created as a, important landmark of Gaya. You perform certain rituals. Then there is another narrative which is associated with the main temple called Vishnupad Temple. And the Vishnupad Temple talks about another story where there is a demon who was so powerful that people did not know how to control him. So the gods went to Vishnu and requested him if we can tame this demon, or else this guy will overpower the city. When that fellow meets Vishnu and tells him that, look, I have been worshipping you for ages, so kindly make sure that my needs are addressed. Vishnu tells him that I can do that provided you decide to be under the ground. And I will make sure that your needs are addressed every day. You are fed by the people who are coming here in the temple. And he goes underground, and the Vishnu keeps his feet on the stone. So you have a footprint of Vishnu there, and that's how it's called Vishnupad Temple. Now, these two interesting stories weave the entire set of activities around Gaya. The Vishnupad is the temple where you visit. The death rituals happen in the nearby riverbed. Then there are 2-3 major hills where you go for performing the rituals. Then there is another interesting hillock where you have a Shakti Peeth. If you understand what Shakti Peeth is there in India, out of 52 Shakti Peeth, one of the Shakti Peeths is in Gaya. Now, this is the grand narrative of Gaya. And side by side, these grand narratives, there is another story of Abramyoni Pahad. There is a mountain. On the top of the mountain, you have a temple of Lord Brahma, the creator. At the middle of the mountain, there is a platform where actually Lord Buddha gave a sermon which was known as Firewalk Sermon. And the Firewalk Sermon as a metaphor was used by even T.S. Eliot. And that spot is itself a very important pilgrimage for the Buddhists who go to Bodh Gaya. And I'm coming to that later. Now, in this structure of Gaya, there is a new city, there is an old city. Old city is actually very interesting. You can see the remains of the classical Hinduism even today. It is believed that there are few localities where you don't move in the night because the ghosts are also moving in the same area. And therefore, respecting their existence, you give them way, etc., etc. Then there are the city also has a patch where you have wrestling going on. There are few wrestling grounds. The same city, traditional part of the city has a patch where the music, the classical music and dance tradition flourishes even till date. So broadly, this is the city called Gaya. I reiterate, one revolving around the temple called Vishnupad, which is a Vishnu temple. The other which revolves around the two sides of the river called Falgu River. Both sides you have temples and you have rituals being performed in the temples. And the third part is the cluster of hills that I talked about, the Pretshila Hills, the Ramshila Hills, and the third hill where you have a Shaktipeeth. Going from here to Bodh Gaya requires about 1 hour. It's about 15 kilometers or so. Road not being so well made, it takes time to reach there. You reach Bodh Gaya. Bodh Gaya, mind you, is about 8 generations later. So when Buddha came here, he must have got lured by the fame of the city as a civilizational center, one of the important civilizational centers in India. I'll come to that. So anything you would like to ask about Gaya, I would explain to you. In the
Thank you.
meantime, before we do that, what we can do, I can show you a glimpse of what I explained to you. Now, if you're looking at this, or if you're able to look at this, this is that, this is the bank where Sita was trying to make sandballs, where the land, the hand emerged out of the sand.
Yeah.
This is the riverbed that you can see, and a beautiful temple you can watch.
And which river is that?
This is called, the river has two names, sir. The river which you see here is called Falgu.
Uh-huh.
And you go about 10 kilometers ahead. Near Bodh Gaya, the river is called Niranjana.
Niranjana. Okay.
The same river has two names. When it passes through Gaya, it is called Falgu. When it passes across along Bodh Gaya, it is called Niranjana. Now I'll just show you few samples. This is the temple photo taken from one side. This is Vishnupad temple. From outside, a photograph which has been taken from a nearby rooftop. This is very interesting, a place where death rituals are performed near a pond. And you can see the family is also not, they are not local. They seem to be Bengali families from maybe West Bengal. And this is the place where, there are impressions that in the night you should not move around, because it is a place for ghosts to move around, not for human beings. These are the belief, may not be actually true, but you are trying to appease them, so you pay respect to their presence there, if at all.
It's a tradition, you say.
It's a tradition.
Right.
Don't take me literally. I'll explain it to you. This is the Vishnupad temple again from outside. One photograph of Vishnupad temple from inside. I'll show you, then we can proceed ahead. This is one of the small Krishna, if you can see.
Yes.
Under a tree in the temple complex itself, in the Vishnupad temple complex. This is one of the cultural maps of Bodh Gaya, very interesting. At the bottom, you see a demon. The fellow is Gayasur I was talking about. And this Gayasur his presence is muted because he goes underground. And the Lord Vishnu, it is believed, kept his feet on his chest, and that's how he remains there. And the impression and the footprint of Lord Vishnu, you can see there, and that's how it's called Vishnu Pada. Vishnu Pada means the feet of Vishnu.
And there is a story which Vishwamitra tells Sri Ram over there.
Yes.
That
Yes.
100 yuga Vishnu performed tapasya there, and Aditi and Kashyap met over there in the same place.
Yes. You're very, and that's another very interesting story.
Right.
Actually, there are fables and fables around the city. I just concentrated on two because those are the fables and stories which everybody knows.
Right.
But the deeper layers, as you are mentioning, this is the riverbed, and in the dry season, it's all dry. Only in the monsoon, the river is filled with water.
Correct.
It'll give you a very interesting idea of how the city looks. Look how it looks in the monsoon.
Beautiful, beautiful.
The photograph is taken from one side of the river.
Right.
And you can see the Vishnupad temple on the other side.
Correct. You see that.
Vishnupad temple is on the other side. And I'm standing as a photographer on this side of the river.
Beautiful. I think one of the skills you have is taking the pictures also.
Yes. That's my passion, sir. And whenever you make a journey, you keep documenting.
Right.
And if you have to document, why not document it aesthetically?
Yes.
That's the idea.
You have taken a very cultural angles you have taken, which is very unique.
Yeah, I'll just give you some idea. Look at the lady. She's going to perform a death ritual. She can't walk. She's an old lady. So they are carrying her on a kind of a carrier made of bamboo. And of course, the youngsters and the people who are able-bodied, they walk on their own. But for old people, such arrangements are there.
So it is in Hindi, it's called palki, right? Palki?
Palki, yes.
Yes.
Now there are many images, but I am going to only show you one important images of one of the important images where you see the interiors of Vishnupad temple. And mind you, this is one of the very important temples in Gaya, and life revolves around this temple called Vishnupada.
So normally the photographs are not allowed in the Indian temples.
Yes, so it's difficult only with the permission of the administration that you can take them, and that too with a lot of do's and don'ts.
Yeah.
Now this is the Vishnupada, and this photograph you can never take. As an outsider, will never get a glimpse. Since we were commissioned by the local administration, they allowed us to take the photograph. So this is the Vishnupada. You can see the symbols on the feet of Vishnu, and every day it's jam-packed because the worshippers come here and they offer their prayers and they worship Vishnu. So these are few images of Bodh Gaya. And then, of course, as you move on, you have all sorts of characters. This is a sadhu on the bank of the river. You have small little ashrams. So they would be performing. This is Maharani Holkar, who actually patronized and renovated many of these temples. And she is not from that area. She has come all the way from Madhya Pradesh. Here again, within the temple complex, all these characters are performing death rituals for their departed ancestors. Another interesting one, they are performing death rituals Hope you can see it, sir.
Yes, yes, we can see very clearly. And I think very people who had never been to Gaya took a glimpse of the feet of Vishnu.
Yes,
Very
yes,
rare,
very rare, and
very rare.
this is also on the ghat of the river,
Yeah.
and you can see all kinds of features: the temple, the tree, people loitering around, etc.
It looks as such a peaceful place.
But it is not as peaceful because now this is the ghat. The you stand in the water and take the photograph. So this is one side of the river. And then there are many temples, and I'm just trying to give you a glimpse of what goes on. After the ritual, you also offer food to the local priests, the Brahmins here. This is another glimpse of that.
Beautiful. Like the angle that you have taken in this picture is amazing. You got the people
Thank you,
sitting,
sir.
the ghat, and the temple arch, like all things combined in that one picture.
Yes, yes, yes. Now I'm going to stop at this.
Uh-huh.
Uh, you may ask me what all they do in the ritual. There are three rituals they perform, and one is called Shraddh, one is called Tarpan, and one is called Pindadan.
Mhm.
And the most auspicious time of the year is during the Pitra Paksh. There's a particular time where this ritual can be performed the best. Though there's no bar, throughout the year people keep coming. But if you come in a particular time, it is the planetary positions are such that the effect is maximum, it is believed. These are all a matter of belief. Now, you look at this. These guys are all having, rice balls in their utensils. And this is called, this they offer to the Brahmins, this they offer to the river. Then this is another one. In the night, they offer lamp to the river. You have a number of foreigners also coming and performing. Those who believe in what goes on, they also come and perform the death rituals for their own ancestors. These are all foreigners. They are not Indians.
Yes. No, there's a growing culture, there's a growing acceptance of Hinduism all over the world. And
Yeah, in the evening you have Aarti being performed at the Ghat, and this is a common feature which you may have seen at Varanasi, at Haridwar,
Rishikesh.
at Rishikesh.
Yes.
So this is almost the same kind of a scene which you find at the banks of river, all important pilgrimage centers. So I'm just giving you a glimpse. After the rituals are performed, they wash their hands in the river itself. And now this is the pind which is offered. There is a betel leaf and rice balls. And rice balls are called pinda. It's a rounded balls which are offered. So broadly, the world of Gaya is like this. A little more on the cultural part of Gaya. This you have seen the religious Gaya. Cultural part of Gaya is as fascinating. And one or two pictures will give you an idea of what it is. Look at the music tradition. There is a tradition called Gaya Thumri, which is a very typical of Gaya. And it is believed that if you are a classical artist in India, and if you have not been to Gaya, that means you have not really attained your peak. So there are 3 to 4 indigenous music traditions out there. You can look at the musicians of Gaya. There's an interesting classical dancer called Dhelabai.
Mhm.
Dhelabai was so popular that it is believed those times when she would perform, out of excitement amongst the audience, they would, throw some kind of small stones on her, which is called Dhela. And that's how she came to be known as Dhelabai. This is the local theater created by an art enthusiast in Gaya, where you can see some plays, etc. These are the cultural part of Gaya. Now there is a particular sweet called Tilkut. If you go to Gaya and if you don't eat these very interesting locally made sweets, that means you have not really visited Gaya. These are the pedas, the lassis. I don't know how many of you have been to this part of the country. These are very, very typical of some ancient place like here. Then you have interesting weavers. There's a locality where you have about 400 weavers. Then there is an interesting village which is called Patthar Kot, where there is a small hill and they keep cutting stones out of the hill and they make Buddha out of it. They make all kinds of. So these are the sculptors at work. And so on. So this is broadly the story of Gaya. And there are layers and layers and layers. And when you have questions, I will try to answer them. So should we go to Bodh Gaya straight, or can we take questions on Gaya and then move on
We'll do Bodh Gaya in a second session, not in this session, because first of all, you have so much of history, right from law enforcement to media consultant, and your book on media was very popular. So I think it will be injustice for me to just cover in one session. So I'll have to invite you again. So one aspect, one thing which comes to my mind, and this is all Sathology is all about, telling the real history of the ancient world. And this is where my new book is coming on Bhagwan Ram. So and in that the Siddhashram is located in the same area, the entire Siddhashram. So Tataka one, then Siddhashram, and then from Girivraj, Bhagwan Ram went north to Mithila with Vishwamitra. So this is the path he took.
Yes.
And without going there, I took a darshan of Gaya today. It's a great fortune for me and for many of the viewers who are watching it for the first time, including they got the darshan of the foot of Vishnu, which is a great, for many people it may not go there, but it's a great fortune for them. Now coming back to this story of Gaya, only I want to focus there. What sparked your interest in Gaya? Are you from there, or is it your childhood fascination, or what is that sparked your interest here?
Sir, I broadly come from a place called Patna, which was the ancient capital of Magad Empire, and it was called Patliputra then. But now it's called Patna. And that place is about 4 hours drive from Gaya. So I'm not from Gaya, but yet broadly it's the same cultural region. So always I felt fascinated about Gaya. And the Gaya's interest actually originated out of Bodh Gaya, because I got a book. I was commissioned by Bodh Gaya Temple Management Committee to do a book on Bodh Gaya. And having gone there, I realized that they are interested only in my covering the temple and the life around the temple. But as I started looking at the temple, I realized that unless I follow the footprints of Buddha, I will not be able to do justice. So there started the journey. Anyway, so I'll be discussing about that at length sometime later. And the book, got published. And when you go to Bodh Gaya today, officially you will be given that book only. That book is different. This book is different from that book. So when they completed the book, the local administration realized that while they have done a great justice to Bodh Gaya, they have done some injustice to Gaya because there is no documentation on Gaya. So the local the chairman of the committee approached me and he said, I don't want to go in for tender, etc. We want to give you the work straight. And that's how Gaya fell in my lap. The project on Gaya fell in my lap. And it was very, very interesting because I thought everybody who has done some work on Gaya has not really touched upon few aspects, which I would like to discuss now. For example, when you go to Gaya next time, there is a hill called Brahmayoni Hill. And as I explained to you in the beginning, this hill has three layers. On the top, you have a Brahma temple. Brahma is the creator of universe, as per the Hindu belief. At the middle layer, you have what you call a platform where Buddha actually gave firewalk sermon. And at the bottom of the hill, you have two very interesting places. One is a pond, which is Saraswati Pond. And you know the relationship between Brahma and Saraswati. It is very interesting. And there is a cave called, Kapil Dhara. And Kapil Muni, as you know, is one of the proponents of, one of the six schools of Indian philosophy called Sankhya.
Sankhya.
Was actually presented by him. Now if you look at India, normally there is an understanding that Kapil Muni belonged to Ganga Sagar.
Correct.
Ganga Sagar is a place near Calcutta in Bengal.
Right.
And it's an island where everybody believes that Kapil Muni was there. But I got a chance, I was lucky enough to go to both the places, and I realized that, for living in a God-forsaken place like, Ganga Sagar, you need to have some basic, requirements filled. Like you need to have some shelter, some natural shelter, some kind of a water source to drink water, and Ganga Sagar doesn't offer anything. It doesn't have a natural shelter. There is no water, drinking water, because there is a sea all around, but you can't drink water there. And third, there are no trees which are called fruit-bearing trees. So how will you survive? So my feeling was that Kapil Dhara was the original place for Kapil Muni, because Kapil Dhara in Gaya has a very deep cave which is divided into 12 segments. And there is a belief that you can't really cross even 2 layers of the cave because there are a lot of snakes. And once the local villagers, tried it out, they tried acting smart, went in a group, and 4 or 5 of them were, bitten by a snake, and 2 of them died. And after that, they don't dare entering that cave. So there was a natural shelter for him to stay. This is, I'm talking about Gaya's Kapil Dhara. Then there is a pond nearby from where you can get drinking water. Naturally, there is a pond, there is a stream, so you have a lot of these trees from where you can eat something. But my feeling was that his permanent abode was Kapil Dhara, but for certain rituals concerning sea, he used to get prepared and go to Ganga Sagar. Now, since the documentation was better in Bengal when it started, it was owned up by that part of the country. People felt that Kapil Muni, belonged to Ganga Sagar. But my impression was that actually he belonged to Gaya, and once in a while he used to go to Ganga Sagar to perform certain rituals. And when he went there, he must be getting prepared for months. So in that hard climate also he survived. So this is one part, very interesting part. Second part about Brahmyoni Pahad is that Brahmyoni mountain is that uh, there's a gentleman called Gaya Kashyap. When Lord Buddha got his enlightenment, he was challenged by many guys, and Gaya Kashyap was one of the top intellectuals of that area, of the Magad area. And people told him that if you are able to beat him in the scholarship game, then only your people will listen to you. And therefore he decided to do that. So when Lord Buddha approached Gaya Kashyap said that, look, we should have a scholarly debate sitting on the hills. So they all assembled on this part of the hill, Brahmyoni Hill, the middle segment, as I mentioned. Very soon Buddha realized that these guys are not really convinced of his enlightenment, so they are up to some mischief. So about 2,000 of them monks gathered together, no place to sit, and there was a commotion, and there was a kind of a disorderly situation. So Buddha, while he was moving around, as you know, before enlightenment he had 3 gurus, and they were all ancient Hindu gurus from whom he learned a number of things, including magic and etc. So he realized that these guys, unless he performed some magic, would not get convinced. So he performed some magic, and the logs got broken, and there was kind of a sitting place for everyone. So everybody took a note that this guy seems to be a little having some extraordinary power. But then the main man Gaya Kashyap was still not convinced, and he started asking some funny questions to Lord Buddha. Lord Buddha, in response, started narrating what was going on in the mind of Gaya Kashyap. So he could read through his thinking. And there Gaya Kashyap actually got startled, because he never expected that Buddha would read his mind so clearly. So this is the story. And then they realized that this guy is certainly, a cut above the rest. And they started listening to him. And there Buddha gave his fire walk sermon. Now, you all are scholars in your own right. I'm sure when you go back and read T.S. Eliot, I'm not sure T.S. Eliot ever gave any credit to, having taken this part from the Buddha's thing. But then that poetry itself became a worldwide, very famous poetry. This is a very interesting part of Brahmyoni, which we must understand. Second part of Brahmyoni I have mentioned was the Kapil Muni's story. Third part is the part which is a Brahma's temple. Now there are 3 gods in India, as you know. One is Brahma, the other is Vishnu, and third is, they are super gods. There are many gods, but these are called super gods. And interestingly, they all have their own set life, but at the same time, they all have their own what you call extra relationship. And for example, Brahma's association with Saraswati is also always debated. And people who try to understand Brahma at times doubt whether the relationship with Saraswati was incestuous and things like that. Though, I mean, if you go a little deeper, you will understand what is there, but there are doubts about that. Similarly, with Vishnu, he had, his consort was Lakshmi, yet he had Tulsi. And Tulsi, similarly with Mahesh, he had Parvati, but at the same time there was a Ganga. And it is said that Parvati was always little uncomfortable about Ganga. Now, out of the three extra relationship, here you have a Brahma Yoni Pahad. The mountain is called Brahma Yoni. On the top, you have a very ancient Brahma's temple. At the bottom, you have a pond, which is a Saraswati pond. And the linkage between the two is beautifully explained in the local literature when you come here. Now, these are the layers of Gaya which are rather interesting. And the fact that the city predates Bodh Gaya, the fact that it attracted even Buddha to come to this place, certainly talks about its antiquity and its interest value.
Actually, Gaya is based on my own research for my own book, Gaya is the oldest, one of the oldest places of pilgrimages from all over the world. Otherwise, Vishnu performed his tapasya 100 yoga, and so it is very well known in the learned circles. But in the what do you call it, the today's Max Muller's generation do not know that. But otherwise, it is a fairly known place for people who are knowledgeable, and that's why it has the importance. But Udayji, there is a lot more to talk to you, but this was our first session, and so we restricted ourselves. But I have 100 more questions on Gaya, but we'll cover that later on. And for all the viewers who are watching it live, do see a recording of this show on YouTube and comment on it as well. And those of you who watched live, all your questions, you don't have any questions now, but in the next show, we'll ask your questions. Thank you, Udayji, for your time. It was a wonderful experience.
My pleasure, sir. I mean, there were some technical glitches in the beginning. Next time we'll be better prepared. But it was such a exciting experience for me also to address, cross-sectional audience here. And next time when we talk, maybe we are a little more focused.
I want to cover with your law enforcement experience and how it connects to the ancient history. And I think this is your personal passion, and that was your occupation. They're two different things right there.
Yes.
And a lot of achievements over there, a lot of achievements you have over there too. And we'll cover that later in the next session. So thank you all viewers for watching it. And Udayji, as usual, namaskar. And thank you so much for coming on the show.
My pleasure, sir. Nice talking to you.